Mismong mga Chino'y nagulat nang biglang gustong palayasin ni Gibo ang China sa Pilipinas. Base sa balitang kumakalat, nagulat ang China kay Defense Secretary Gibo nang biglang gustong ipatotal ban ang China. Ayon sa Defense Secretary, i-boycott na natin ang China sa mga transaksyong may kinalaman sa security, gaya ng mga kontratang inahire pa sila sa Pinas. Alam ng threat sa national security.
I've given the instruction to stop outsourcing these things already. Even in our service outsourcing, we have to tailor even the most basic services to conform to operational security. Our contractors, for example, they are now being subjected to secure and strict vetting, because how do we know what they're doing in there? They are a possible target for espionage. There is a full security review ongoing.
Sa mga hindi nakakaalam, nagsimula ang ideyang ipaban sila dito ni Teodoro matapos siyang aluking hatian sa West Philippine Sea ni Wang Silian o 50-50 sa gitna. Ayaw ni Teodoro, mabuti pang palayasin na lang daw natin si Wang Silian.
The encroacher has a vast area of sea. And if they ask us to meet them halfway when they have already eaten 3/4 of the way into our exclusive economic zone, where is the fairness in that? Who's fooling who? And if there are spillover effects, we are not to blame. We are not the ones encroaching on the exclusive economic zone of another country.
Babala pa ni Teodoro, sinisigurado niyang hindi sa Pilipinas magsisimula ang gulo. Pero isa lang ang sinisigurado niya sa mga Pilipino, hindi uurong ang Pilipinas sa araw na mag-arm attack ang mga Chino.
As much as possible, nobody wants an armed conflict. But we can also not just accept illegal and unconscionable encroachments into what rightfully belongs to the future generation of Filipinos. I do hope that there is some sanity and some sincerity behind the words of peaceful intent to avoid an armed conflict.
Tila hindi naman makapaniwala si Secretary Gibo kay Commodore J. Tariela matapos mahuling hindi sila nagbabantay, kaya nakapasok na naman sa Scarborough ang China. Matapos idahilan, kulang daw ang barko, alam namang Scarborough ang tinatarget ng China.
I have to be very honest with you. It is a result of the rotational deployment for us to optimize the presence of our Coast Guard vessel. At this point forward, we are reaching out to the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources that our presence should be supplemented by the BFAR vessel. In those instances that our Coast Guard vessels will be in other areas of the West Philippine Sea patrolling, we are hoping that the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources can be able to deploy their vessels on those times that we're not there. And also, at the same time, if BFAR will not have vessels to deploy there, the Coast Guard will still be there. Now, your question, Ms. Karen, are we just going to continue doing this? Patrolling.
But you said something I feel that is quite important and has moved the conversation forward. Today is clearly the Coast Guard, the Chinese Coast Guard, you said they have complete control and physically they are always there. Tama, no? They
Yes,
are always there. In other words, for lack of a better word, they're parked there.
Basically, they are patrolling there.
Exactly.
For
Patrolling
more
there,
than
parked
a
there,
decade.
possibly it's rotational, so if one vessel leaves, another one replaces it immediately.
Yes.
So maganda ang punto nyo, napaka-practical. Dapat tayo rin, may ganun, may kapalit.
Yes. And Ms. Karen, this is also the first time, during the time President Marcos, that it was only last year that we came so close, to Baho de Masinloc during the BFAR and the Coast Guard deployment of our assets. It's not true that we have just allowed the Chinese to take control of it. Under this administration, at the same time that they are deploying their vessels, the Philippine government is also deploying our government vessels.
Oo. Palagay niyo ba, Commodore, if let's say there was a Philippine vessel there, whether it was the Coast Guard or BFAR, na nandun din at that time, do you believe the Chinese Coast Guard could have treated the Filipino fishermen that way, ordered them to return what they have harvested, or do you believe it could have taken on a different turn? Maybe they could have just ignored the fishermen.
I think, Ms. Karen, it would have been a different story. Based on our experience and engagement with the Filipino fishermen while the Chinese Coast Guard are there, they are always thankful that the Philippine Coast Guard or BFAR vessel is in Bajo de Masinloc, because they even reported to us that if we are there, then the Chinese Coast Guard will not board their vessel, will not get their catches, or will not even bother them. No, the Chinese Coast Guard will just primarily focus their attention on the Philippine Coast Guard and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources vessel. So it means that whenever we're there, they are neglected. The attention is on us.
Yeah. So technically, if we really want to exercise, right, jurisdiction, ownership of territory when it comes to that area, there has to be a system, right, of rotation. It has to be scheduled. It has to be intentional on the part of this government. It can't be na pag nawala ang Coast Guard, hindi nyo alam sinong papalit. Or pag alis nyo, wala pang kapalit. So ngayon, wala pang ganung plano, Commodore. Because you just brought it up now on Head Start.
Well, Ms. Karen, no, it only happened. The only reason why we brought it up right now is because unfortunately, there was really a lapse on the part that there is no BFAR that was there to cover the absence of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel. But I think this will already be operationalized in the next coming months, considering that since we started this transparency and maintaining our presence in the West Philippine Sea, it was only this time, this current, that another harassment has ever happened to the Filipino fishermen. Since last year and now, ngayon lang naman tayo uli nakarinig ng ganitong uri ng harassment with the Chinese Coast Guard.
At the end of the day, on a day-to-day level, the Chinese Coast Guard is there, right? It's there. So where are we? I'm just curious, all right? I mean, at the end of the day, fishermen will go there and the Chinese Coast Guard is there. Are we there?
Well, Ms. Karen, if we're just talking about Bajo de Masinloc, we obviously, right after the Scarborough standoff, we totally lost control of Bajo de Masinloc. Since 2012 until now, it passing through three presidential administration, from the time President Aquino, President Duterte, now President BongBong Marcos. It is already an open book that the Chinese Coast Guard has a complete control of Bajo de Masinloc. Now, the approach of this current administration, besides from the Transparency Initiative, is to, it was very clear that the President has given a specific instruction to the Philippine Coast Guard and to the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources that despite the presence and the effective control of the Chinese Coast Guard in maintaining Chinese Coast Guard deployment in the area, we also have to deploy our own vessels to make sure that we're going to protect the welfare of the Filipino fishermen. But in this particular incident, that there are no Coast Guard assets or even BFAR assets that were there.
Ngayon, ikaw, bilang Pilipino, ano ang masasabi mo at reaksyon sa balitang ito? Mag-iwan ka ng komento sa ibaba at atin pong babasahin isa-isa.